welcome to Boulevard's Big Three, where we get to talk about this week's sermon with questions from you, me, Emily, and Jax, which, we didn't talk about this earlier, but they are an engaged couple. If you watch regularly, you know this, but we love them. They're going to be getting married. When are y'all getting married?
October the 18th.
October the 18th. That's going to be here before we know it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, this week we continued with our Upside Down Movement series, and guys, every week we've gotten a really great practical message from the book of Acts. It's been so good. So let's start with a question or observation. Each one of us, we're going to all go around and share a highlight. So Emily, do you want to start?
Yeah, so one of the things that stood out to me, because I felt very convicted in this lesson, and there were a lot of things that stood out to me, but one of them was how Kelvin was talking about that God sent Philip out of the city into the desolate, isolated place where nobody would have been. He would not have gone out there on his own, most likely, to search for the one person out there. And it reminded me of the parable of the lost sheep that Jax was talking about this morning, how God will go out and search for the one person. How there were so many people in the city of Jerusalem who could do the job that Philip was doing, but Philip was needed to go and find the one that was out there that he would not have been able to find if the eunuch was not on that road at that time.
Yeah. So good. It was like Philip had Life 360 on this Ethiopian eunuch. I mean, I love that. I love that to part two, where he said he went alongside his chariot, as he's, and I was picturing him running next to him going, do you understand what you're reading? I love that story.
I do too, and I always picture it the same way, where he's like running along or like holding on for dear life.
Yeah.
And it's just like, man, he was willing to do that to spread the gospel. That's crazy.
I know. So good. So good. What about you, Jax? What really stood out to you?
Yeah, so the thing I wrote down and highlighted a bunch of stuff, but the one that really stuck to me was Kelvin's discussion that the deepest questions in life have their answer through Jesus. I am a big question person. I want to know why, how, where, all of that. And the three that he references specifically, what's my purpose, how do I go through life, and what happens after death, the amount of times I've lost sleep over all three of those specifically is huge. And so getting those kind of citations of saying, here's where Jesus already answered that for me, was just crazy. And it was really cool to think about. And like Emily, this was a very convicting sermon for me. I definitely struggle a lot with trust. And so kind of that reserved, like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not qualified for that.
Right.
And holding back was it was good today.
Yeah, so good. And, I just thought, as you were saying that, how you said about losing sleep over these questions. First of all, he doesn't say don't ask the questions.
Right.
He's saying I've got the answers.
Right.
You can ask him. I've got the answers. But also, we talk about how Jesus is the Prince of Peace. And that's how one of the ways he gives us peace is the answers.
Yeah.
So you can sleep at night.
Yeah.
Because he wants you to have peace.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so I had written down my own big three, and now I'm trying to, get it down to which one I wanted to talk about. But I think one of the things that really jumped out at me, and you touched on this a bit, but he said, if you show God your availability, God will use you. And that is convicting, because I think about, I'm at a different stage in my life than you guys. I've got 4 kids, so I'm really busy. I've got a part-time job, a bunch of other part-time things that I do. And so for me to say, I'm going to commit to this thing that I feel like God's calling me to, I have to probably ignore a few other things. And that's hard. It's really hard. And so, because we also know we have to set boundaries. And so I try as much as I can, even if it is coming down to like bringing a meal to a new mom, I try and, if I can, I'm trying to stop and ask God, do you want me to do this? Is this for my own praise and glory, or is this for you, God? Is this something? How do you want me to use it? Because it's usually not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's going to be a good thing to do for somebody, but does He want me to use my limited time for it?
Yeah, that's always a question that I forget to ask.
Right, me too.
Is this something that God is actually calling me to, or is this something I'm wanting to do?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No. And so for me, I want to get super involved in places and serve places, but in the back of my mind, I'm always like, is that going to fit in my schedule? And I got to check my calendar. Will that leave me enough time to do this? And that is really what kind of hit me. And I mean, with you, I never admittedly thought to ask you, is this for my own personal glory? But I struggle with trying to make sure I feel like I have time to serve God, and it definitely needs to be flipped around, go the other way.
Do that first, and then, and of course, I mean, like in your job, you know, you guys are worshiping and you're trusting God and you're doing all the things while you're doing your job that you have to do to pay the bills, you know. So I mean, like you can do both at the same time. But I do love that idea because, you know, Philip had this great ministry that he was doing, and he was taking care of those widows, and he was preaching, and then God was like, I need you to go somewhere else, and he was like, bloop, all right, let's go. And I mean, the best, too, at the end of the story was after he was with the Ethiopian eunuch, it's almost like God was like, you know, it took you a while to get out there. I'm just going to zip you to the next place.
Yeah.
I love that he, like, teleported to the next place. I mean, the Bible is so amazing. So amazing. I love it. Anything else, guys?
I think that, I mean, I could go on and on.
I know, me too. It was so good.
I've got like lists of notes here. Yeah.
It was so good. And so for those of you who weren't here to watch the sermon at the beginning, we were in Acts 8. And so go back and read those stories. This story of Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch, Acts 28, 26 through 40. So read those. Yeah.
And if you have any more questions, let us know by scanning the QR code on your screen.
That's right. And we can even talk about it next week. So if you've got questions, send them because we've got them too.
Yeah. And if you're wanting to rewatch the sermon or watch it for the first time, you can find it at boulevard.to/sermons. And that's a wrap for this week's Big Three.
Thanks for being with us. Look for this podcast on your favorite platforms and be sure to join us next week for Boulevard's Big Three.